The driving mission at Gosports is to bring you the best paintball content and broadcast in the world, behind the scenes, in the pits, and on the field. To continue this mission, we're rolling out a renovated website platform across the board, with easier search functions and a more robust chat system for better interaction with your fellow fans. Dive farther into the game with a new integrated stats portal. Get your insight into the game anytime, anywhere, with an improved functionality across all mobile devices. Check it out now on Gosports.com. Don't miss the most important battle of the year. The best. The game of paintball is a diverse activity that means many different things to many different people. But to a team originating out of Canada, Edmonton Impact, it means one thing above all others: a quest to be the absolute best. Their adventure started back in 2003 in the rookie division.
Split with Team Peg Factory. We are from Edmonton, Alberta. We're Canadians, right there.
We do a lot of training back here in Edmonton.
Then after over a decade and a half of hard work and perseverance, their Canadian core, surrounded by a select group of elite imported talent, came to define dominance as they railed off 14 wins all over the world during a 4-year run. They hadn't just climbed the mountain, they had become the mountain.
This is it. So big congratulations to Edmonton Impact.
Love your Impact! Way to go!
It says a lot. You know, I think about the boys and 10 years old playing, and you never dreamed of coming this far and how we've come.
But after their success with the win in Vegas last year, they hit a slump with disappointing finish after frustrating performance. But changes were made and new players were brought in. Now re-energized and reformed, Impact's mission remains the same as it always has been: crush everyone on the way to the #1 spot and become the best team ever to pick up a paintball gun. Join us on the Impact Series as we dive into all the on and off field drama that drives this legendary squad and their journey to get back to the top. Brought to you only by Gosports.com. Welcome to Gosports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I hope everyone is staying happy and staying safe. I know a lot of craziness going on out there all across the world, and we're going to try to take your mind off that a little bit here. Happy today to have Paddy Gleason, one of the first attackers for Seattle Thunder. So we got underdog week this week, man. We got a guy here, Paddy Gleason, struggled through some real deal stuff in life, but is able to persevere and move on. And so we're going to kind of dive deep into that. Also on Friday, we have Jesse Stevens, who was able to climb the mountain and had to fight long and hard in order to get into the position that he's on, one of the best teams in the world. And they just won the series title last year. So we're going to dive into that on Friday. But today we are going to dive into Paddy Gleason's story. We're going to talk about what he's got going on with Off The Leash. Actually, he just brought in Jesse into the fold for Off The Leash. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Seattle Thunder. Also, though, a couple notes. We are dropping episode 2 of the Impact. That will be coming at you here. And we also have Gosports Tactics. Just filmed episode 1 with Kyle Spica not too long ago. We got episode 2 with Archie Montemayor breaking down one of their wins from last year. And it's going to be a new series that we got dropping. So we will also, before we know it, come hell or high water, have live paintball content coming at you here once we get through this quarantine, though. So we got to stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. Anyway, Paddy, let's jump into it, man. How you doing up there? How you doing up north?
Good, man. Good, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Glad we got those internet things out the way. So cross your fingers. It holds tough here.
It's looking good so far. Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's at home right now. There's, like I was telling people on the show the past couple of weeks, as I talked to my internet guy, and I stopped him. I'm like, hey, bro, can I talk to you real quick? I got a question. Doing the speed test over here. I'm not getting nearly what I was getting before. What's the deal? And he just looked at me. He's like, dude, no, seriously, everyone's at home and they're either working or they're on Netflix right now, dude. I don't know what to tell you. It is what it is. We're like, okay, so we're doing best I can here with the connection. But we got you locked in the pocket right now. So let's just dive right into it, man. Let's talk about the story. Let's talk about your story to start out with, because you do have a very captivating story. You're very, very open and honest about the struggles that you've had to endure and all the craziness you've had to get through with substance abuse. You had to come from D4 to pro. And, you know, we've seen you trying to fight for playing time on Seattle Thunder, but you've had some really good points out there. I think the future is going to be bright for you and your game. I really do like the team you play on. I think Thunder has an awesome story. You know, with the loss of Harrison Fry in the offseason, I think you're going to be getting and already have gotten more playing time, but there's a lot of captivating up-and-coming guys that are very talented on your squad. We'll get to that in a bit. But before we get to that, let's talk about your story.
Hey.
How did you get here, and what did you have to do in order to play the game at this level? You know, I mean, just tell me where you started, man. How'd you get into this game?
Yeah. You know, it's been a long story. I really started playing in 99 back in the day. And so I've been playing paintball for a long time. I grew up watching you and Todd and Ollie and from the Iron Kids all the way on. And so it's like always just been a dream of mine to make it pro. And I've had a long road, you know, and hit roadblocks along the way and just keep going forward. And I think, you know, for those that don't kind of know my backstory, I grew up on Maui, Hawaii. And so paintball was pretty small back then, you know. We're always a little bit behind the times. So I started it was like 6th grade, playing some pump and stuff like that. And it really, I was always grew up playing sports and stuff like that. And it really captured me. I think maybe because my mom never let me have guns, like we're growing up and everybody had BB guns and paintball guns. So obviously I was just more drawn to do that because she said no. So as soon as she let me go play, it was off to the races, man. Like I couldn't stop playing.
Dude, just real quick, I feel you, man, because that's what happened to me too. I was actually shocked. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember walking into my parents' bedroom. And I figured I might as well start with my mom first because I don't think my dad gave a shit. And you know, so I was just like, hey, you know, because he was gonna be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Stop asking me questions about things. But so hey, mom, you know, I was thinking we were gonna go play. I was 15 and a half, and this was 1993, I think it was. And I was like, hey, I want to go play paintball. I need you to sign this permission form. And I really thought she was gonna say no because she hated guns. My dad, you know, he had a gun in the nightstand, and my grandfather grew up on a farm in Lodi, California, up north, and I'm 5th generation, or I think maybe 6th generation Californian, and you know, guns run in our family. And my great grandfather helped start Ducks Unlimited up north, but I remember before I wanted to get this badass pellet gun, and I asked my grandpa was down. My birthday is the day before Christmas, and so instead of I kind of bypassed my mom at dinner by asking my grandfather, I was like, would you think I should get this pellet gun? And he was like, he looked at me, looked at my mom, and he didn't say yes or no. He just said, well, you know, I got a 10 gauge shotgun for my 12th birthday. So, you know, but my mom said yes and signed that form. I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to happen. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's a very, very similar story. I got invited to a birthday party. And yeah, this is actually pretty funny. And, got invited to this birthday party. It was me and my good friend who invited me, but it was actually his older brother's birthday party. And they were going to go play paintball. And my mom, like I said, was always really against having guns. And I begged her. And she finally said, okay. Mm-hmm. And so my friends come pick me up. We don't go to a field, right? We go to this abandoned like highway, AKA a road that had like a gulch, and it had a bridge, and we were playing with the old school Talons. It gets even more outlaw. So we were playing with the old school Talons, you know, the plastic pump guns. But my buddy's dad used to be the old football coach for high school, and so we had football helmets with fine chicken wire over the face masks. And that
that's pretty outlaw.
That was my first experience playing paintball. And so my mom being so safety oriented and stuff like that, I'm sure my friend's dad probably just bullshitted to her and was just like, oh yeah, like we're gonna be completely safe, we're gonna wear helmets and all that stuff. And it was probably the most unsafe environment that you could be in to play paintball. And I remember though, like it was yesterday though, and I was playing against my buddy's older brother, and he was across the gulch. And like, you know, the Talons, man, those were pretty crappy guns. And he was
not
running
our best
from
foot
like
forward when it comes to the it's not our best foot forward. Yeah,
he was running from a bush to bush, like across the gulch. And I just pumped it and I let it fly, and I seen the thing curve, and it just hit him square in the mask. And paint was all over his face. He was spitting it. You know, he took off his helmet and was making a big deal out of it. And I remember from that point on, I was like, this is my calling, man. So
love that.
Well, and then to kind of speed that up, so I you know, played paintball with a bunch of my friends, and then kind of we had one of like the best teams in the islands at the time, and everyone knew of them and stuff like that. And ended up playing my first tournament with two of my other friends. It was a 3-man tournament, and the team that is like the best team had 3 teams in there, and we beat them all. We took first place. This was in the 7th grade, and that team ended up picking me up. And then, so that's really where I got introduced to like tournament paintball, and they would travel to the mainland to play tournaments and stuff like that. So at an early age, I got to kind of be experienced to kind of the speedball and tournament lifestyle. They were all way older than me, so I also got into a bunch of fucking shenanigans. And
because I want to get into the shenanigans, but I also, can we just touch I just want to touch base on Hawaiian paintball, because there's always been a huge subculture in the islands. I remember going out there a couple times, and kind of, I got an uncle who lives out in Hawaii, and a couple 3 cousins that were raised out there. But I remember going over there to teach a clinic and to do some big game stuff. I've been over there a couple times to play the game, but being from San Diego and being from California, working with Aaron Carter back in the day when he was working with Dave Youngblood, when I was working my way through college, and he was from Hawaii. You know, he grew up and only spoke pidgin when he didn't wear any shoes until he was 15 before he got into the Navy. So I kind of got over time to really get to know, you know, a lot of the people that were from the islands, and there was a really big Hawaiian subculture. I wouldn't say really big, but there was a very potent subculture with the game of paintball at different levels. There's a pump subculture over there. You know, it was a really cool thing. But also very confrontational too. You know, you would have these kind of like, it was very tribal, you know, very tribal, and which was kind of funny but it was, you know, island and island and town to town. And so can you just, because I think that's something I've never been able to talk to anybody about this on the show before, but I think that it's just really cool if you could just maybe talk a little bit about Hawaiian paintball and that subculture.
Yeah, actually, shout out to Aaron Carter, because during this time when I'm playing for this team, he was good friends with our captain. So whenever we would come up to the mainland, we'd go to San Diego to play the tournaments, and we'd always stay at Aaron's house, or we'd always be hanging out with Aaron and Tanya. And so I haven't, you know, I don't even know what those guys are up to these days. I would love to say what's up to them, and because I was just a little tyke back then. But paintball back in the islands, it's definitely rivals. So like Maui always had big rivals with Oahu, where my teammate GJ is from. GJ's on Oahu, I'm on Maui, where there's always big rivalry between the islands, because Oahu always just felt like they were better than us. And so we were always kind of the underdogs. And then pump is always big. Like I grew up playing pump and woods ball, because back then, like I said, paintball was always behind the times. You know, you guys were playing speedball and airball, and we didn't get our first field till like a couple years into it. You know what I mean? So it was always like living through back then all the videos and magazines and stuff like that. That was our lens to like the bigger world of paintball, because we would always be behind the times. But I as far as players coming out of Hawaii, we really pride ourselves off of just our gun skills and really technical styles, just because we have the time to practice, and there's not really a lot of, you know, you're playing the same people over and over and over and over. So we really just take the pride in taking the time to learn, you know, your snapshots and your off the break shooting, and just drills. That's really how my upbringing came. But then to kind of divert back, like so as I kind of grew up, I left Maui to pursue paintball, and ultimately ended up in Eugene, Oregon. And that's kind of where my meeting with Corey and everything happened. This was back in like 2005, 2006 era. And then that's kind of where my substance abuse really hit a downfall. But I ultimately started using with the same friend that took me to play paintball back in the 6th grade.
Wow.
So it goes hand in hand with me. Paintball and my substance use all the way until I got clean.
Is that really hard? Is that, I mean, I don't want to interrupt too much. So I want you to tell your story in your own words, but I got to ask questions every now and then. But is that kind of hard now to deal with because it was so hand in hand? So you've eventually had to disconnect between the substance abuse and paintball, but that is something because paintball does attract, I mean, all shapes and sizes, man. We have pastors that play the game. We have, saints and sinners and every possible iteration of human being in between. And most people are both, as we're all human. And we're all just trying to just get through life the best we can. But I think this is specifically potent to have this conversation now while we're all kind of dealing with what's going to happen in the future. We're all trapped at home. Everyone's spending probably way too much time in their heads, way too much time looking at a lot of negative stuff. And I think this is a really potent conversation. This is why I thought it would be really cool to have this conversation with you this week and kind of do, like I said, like an underdogs week. Jesse's coming up next. Different story with him, though. But I really want to dive into this substance abuse thing. As I grew up in San Diego. We had a big meth problem here. I didn't really go down that road because one of my best friend growing up, he's a year and a half older than me, the youngest of 3 brothers. And I saw him go down that road when I was about 10 to 12. So he got into it super hard, getting into meth and doing tons of drugs, so I remember him, skating down we lived on this big hill and I would hear his skateboard and I'd be up sometimes and I'd go out and talk to him. I'm like 12 years old, sneaking out and talking to him. He's 14 and he's just twacked out on meth, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking like, it scared the shit out of me. Cause I'm like, I never want to be like this because I saw one of my heroes, like my older friend who I loved to death and I looked up to my entire life. We were baby, we met, I was in a stroller. I was, 6 months old and he was 2, it was like, that was how we met. And and I still know this guy to this day. He was in my wedding, and he's now a father himself and was able to get clean and then had some problems with booze a little bit later. But now he's just completely clean 100%, so it's a lifelong struggle for some people. So knowing, and that's just one story. But that's, is it hard for you to kind of disconnect the two because it was your really close friend that helped you get started in the game? Or is it two different things in your mind?
Not anymore. Because thankfully, very humbled. I've been able to accumulate, I'll be coming up on my 9th year, this year clean. And addicts are a different breed. Like, I cued into what you just said about, you would see your friend and you were scared to death because you saw what he was going through, where through my eyes, and this may sound sick to some people, but I don't know. This is just my story. And that's how I tell it. I was always attracted to the substances. You know what I mean? Like, I remember in the 5th grade thinking, I can't wait to use drugs. And and that's just
say no. And it's like, and you're like, no, I can't wait to say yes. Like, I want to say, yeah, where can I get this stuff? Like, I just want to do it now.
Yeah. And then, and then to kind of like play it out, like I have always, there was red flags growing up throughout my life. Like, I started using smoking weed and drinking in 6th grade. By the 8th grade, I almost OD'd on pain pills, on my friend's pain pills that she got from the dentist office. I popped 20 something pills or something like that and, threw them all up and I was out of it. And that's another story. So that's just one other red flag. In high school, I was wilding out, I was really bad drinking and driving and almost killed myself a couple times drinking and driving. And that should have been a red flag. And then ultimately I progressed to heroin and I, gave myself a seizure and all this stuff, all this fucking crap, you know what I mean? And I'm still here. And ultimately was kind of knocking on the door to play pro back in Oregon. And I was going to practices high, and I was also drug dealing at the time. And that lifestyle kind of was just pulling me away from my love, and ultimately stopped playing. And that's where my life really went downhill until I finally decided to get my shit together. And I moved back home, and then I think I was like 2 years clean before I stepped back onto the field. And then ultimately that was 2013-ish. And then from there, kind of rebuilding my life, and got this like bug to really just try and pursue going pro again. And fuck, man, I'm here. So
yeah, you made again. It's underdog week, dude. You made it. You made it.
I made it.
So I mean, obviously, there's a lot. There's this road is torturous. It's twisted, and it's very long and arduous. But if you could track back, and if you could talk to somebody, I mean, imagine I'm, obviously forget about the gray beard and the bald head, but imagine I'm 13 and I'm in that same kind of tentative spot. Maybe I come from conflict. A lot of times people that struggle with substance abuse, they have undiagnosed trauma, or they have trauma that they're processing. And then they use, that lever of the substances to try to lift that unbelievably heavy weight that is that trauma. And then that covers it up. The substance covers up that trauma. So there's trauma to deal with. Obviously there's the actual physical mechanism of the addiction itself and how that molecule interacts with your brain and the brain chemistry there. There's a lot that we could kind of go down here, but if you just kind of maybe could talk to somebody that was going down that road, what would you have to say to them? I mean, is there, it's because like you said, you were predisposed to that from an early age. Did you come from, a place of trauma early on, and that was something you had to deal with, and you were looking to kind of use that as an outlet to get away from those emotions? Or was it just because sometimes it's, people, their home life was fine and they just wanted to chase the dragon? Everyone's story is a little bit different. What do you think?
I think from birth, I had a different mindset to things, because that even carries over into my life now. I did not, that's just not part of my story. I did not grow up in an abusive environment. My parents supported me all the way through my drug addiction. They've always been there. There were maybe events and stuff like that did happen that I could quote unquote maybe use as an scapegoat, but I don't think that was a big part of it either. Ultimately, the best description that really resonated with me was addiction is the disease of feelings. And I have always been really hard. It's always been really hard for me to process feelings. And I learned from an early age by using that I could forget about those feelings. You know what I mean? And so I really didn't learn how to deal with my feelings until after I got clean, and that's kind of what I tell, because I spent, I used to be a substance abuse counselor for adolescents. And I would always just tell them all the time, you don't want to be 25, 30, 40, or 50 learning how to live life again, through the mind of a 12-year-old. It's very frustrating and very hard to do. So, I mean, I think if I were to be telling someone that is any age, really, that is stuck in between a rock and a hard place and resonates with my story, is just that, one, it's to destigmatize addiction, right? Letting them know that it's not something that you should be like ashamed of. That, two, you should use it as a beacon of light, that there is hope, that on the other side of the fence, if you get through it, like, you can have a very fulfilling life. And I just really love my life that I have today. And for anyone to take example of just my story, and that's why I like to come on here and just share it, is to be that beacon of light for people, to show them that there is a way.
Was there a rock bottom for you? I mean, did you save yourself? Did somebody throw a lifeline for you? I'm assuming there was probably multiple levels of it. I'm assuming there's not one or the other necessarily. It's not like you did it specifically or I'm assuming, because again, just having known some people that have dealt with this stuff before, is that it's incredibly complex. It's incredibly gray areaed out as hard as it possibly can be. But if you wanted to share something, again, I'm just, we had talked about this before, and I really appreciate your honesty here, because, paintball does attract, again, all shapes and sizes. We have, every single possible human being, I think that I could meet over the past, I don't know, what is it, 26 years or 27 years now I've met. But what does sometimes attract a very hardcore group of people as well, too. So, I mean, and I just, and you had said, look, I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. So I feel like, did you have a rock bottom? Did somebody help save you? How did it work as far as the mechanism of you getting out of that abyss?
I'm very fortunate in my story, and it's I oftentimes get taken aback just by thinking of how I got out of it. But I did it by, technically you could say I did it on my own, in the sense where I never went to any recovery centers or anything like that. There was two rock bottom. There was two rock bottoms though. The first one was when I was still in Eugene, Oregon. I was selling a lot of dope, man. So my life was pretty comfortable, and I developed a really bad habit because I just had whatever I wanted. And so I had a rock bottom because, like I said, even though I had the money and stuff like that, I was very hollow inside, very spiritually, physically, and mentally bankrupt. And I was just at wit's end. And I looked around, and there was needles all over the place. Me and my ex-girlfriend at the time just had a very, very weird relationship. And I just deep down knew that this was not my lifestyle. At some point I was like, this is not me. And so I ended up selling all the kinds that I had. And we shipped, got rid of everything, shipped up, and went back to Maui. And that was so freaking crazy to think about, because we went back home, and then we brought like a little bit of dope with us to kind of keep us well. And then that dope ran out that night. So the next day after, which was Thanksgiving, man, I felt like death. That come down, I'll never forget. Comes to find, like, I did some research after, and I was like on the verge of having a stroke. I had the symptoms of having a stroke, and just was miserable, man. If you ever been dope sick and trying to kick it, this was on 10. I mean, you go from having a healthy habit of IV heroin use to going completely cold turkey. It's something that should be done with a medical supervision.
Yeah.
And it was on, bless my parents, man. It was on Thanksgiving. They were supposed to have a bunch of people over and stuff like that. And me and my ex-girlfriend at the time were completely dope sick, like Exorcist style. And then we got out of that. But we weren't clean. I was still drinking. I was still using coke. I was still smoking weed and this and that. And ultimately was hanging around some of my old friends back on Maui. And you hang around the barbershop, you're going to get your hair cut. And they had oxys. So they had oxys, and I ended up relapsing on oxys. And then that spiraled down. It only took 7 months for that to really spiral down to hit another rock bottom, where then my ex-girlfriend at the time finally left. And which was the best thing that probably happened, right? So she left.
Yeah.
I still continued to use for maybe a week or so after that. And then I remember waking up and I was just skin and bones. I remember rolling out of bed and I could like feel all of my bones. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like a skeleton.
Yeah.
And I just told myself, man, like this, I can't feel like this again. And I got, finally I got clean, and I didn't do anything. I was able to string some days along without anything except nicotine. So, but that, in the recovery world, nicotine is seen as okay. So, but ended up kicking that cold turkey again, and was working 7 days a week at a restaurant, and was coming down, and just persevered through that, and was able to now string along. I'm going, counting on 9 years. So,
well, can I ask you this question? That what was the why though? Like, if you had like you said, a healthy habit in the sense that you weren't, you weren't on the street, you weren't getting arrested, you didn't really have a necessarily like a standard rock bottom, but you said spiritually it just wasn't for you, and you kind of brought yourself out of that abyss because of why. That's what I'm just wondering, like, what was it that brought you out of that? Because a lot of times, like, one of the shows that I feel like I want to make my kids watch this show is that, and it's been on forever, that show Intervention, which is I would used to joke with people. I'm like, when my roommates back in the day, I'd be watching the show, or my wife now, or whatever, friends, sister, whatever, they'd be like, why are you watching this show? The show is horrible. The show is like it's like the abyss. And I was like, yeah. And that's what they should call it. They should call it Tales from the Abyss, because it's such a dark look at the human psyche, because these people are at the end. I mean, in order to be on that show, you got to be at the end of your rope, like either this close away from death, or killing somebody else, or, depending on what it is, whatever substance it is. And there's only a certain amount of substances that are on that show. You're typically on meth. You're drinking, 3 pints of vodka a day, or it's heroin or pills. Yeah. Like, those are the 4 things that typically send you down that road hardcore. But I'm just wondering for you, what was the why? Because there was no intervention. There wasn't somebody bringing, the hand of God to you, or, use your metaphor for whatever that thing may be. But you saved yourself essentially. So what was the why? Like, where's the why? Because now I want to kind of transition this into your mission now, which is to like bring health and wellness into the world and help people be their best. So I think that that's kind of an interesting transition to what you're currently spending your life doing, instead of just, sucking on the teat of oblivion with the opiate molecule,
And I think, and I've been asked that question because people hear my story and they're like, how the hell did you do that? You know what I mean? And I often get questioned like, what was your why? What pulled you out of that? And I honestly, just like my mindset of, like I told you, when I was younger, like I was like, oh, I want to do drugs. I'm going to go do that. And I did that. My mindset is also, I'm just going to get something done. I've always been that type of way, like I've always had a really strong mindset that I'm capable of doing things. And like I said, when I rolled out of bed and I just felt like a skeleton and decided not to do that, I put my mind to it and I just did it. Like, I can't pinpoint that there was an exact why, if that makes sense. It was just like, sometimes I'm content with just saying it was a freaking miracle. Like, as easy as that. Like, I really don't have a science or blueprint behind why I did it. I just, my higher power was looking out for me and knew that I was destined for something bigger. You know what I mean? And and I ended up pulling myself out of that. I still, to this day, I'm connected with all the guys that I used to play with. And then so obviously when I'm going through all of this, my friends are loving me from afar, right? Like, a lot of people didn't want anything to do with me. When I did come around, they're like, uh-oh, Paddy's here, but they still really liked me.
Oh shit, Paddy's here, dude. Just tell him right away you don't want any heroin. No, dude, I'm cool. I don't want any fucking heroin. I'm straight.
And so when I did finally get clean and word got around the street, my paintball friends reached out to me and they're like, hey man, we're still playing. You should come out and play. I got invited to play this tournament, and we got first place at the tournament and beat the team that was reigning champions. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh man, I remember paintball. Like, yeah, this was
Maui
back in
still, or okay. Yeah. And what year was this then? When you got back? So when did you kick it? When did you get back into it?
So I started using at 12. I got clean at 25 on November 11th, 2011. So 11/11/11. And then I started playing paintball in 2012. 12. So it was just a little over a year before I picked my first gun back up. And I got invited to go play. We ended up taking first. I realized, man, I have been missing this, and dove all the way back in. Instantly hit up Corey and was like, hey, man, I'm getting back into the game. Hook me up with a Lux. And I gotta, dude, I'm an addict. I gotta go full bore.
Hey, I'm getting back. I got my license back. Could you give me that Ferrari, bro? You know what I'm saying? Like, I started driving again. I love that Lamborghini. Hook it up.
And so I got my gun, started playing with the guys that we played it with again. And like, dude, Matty, this is what's really crazy when I was kind of sitting down and reaching this. Like, I really should not be where I'm at. 2016 was my first NXL event ever in D4 playing at World Cup. Because I went there because World Cup is always a special time for me because it falls on that weekend of November 11th usually. So in 2016, when I went, I was celebrating my 5 years clean, and I was playing with my boys Hawaiian Heat. Yeah, I was playing with my boys Hawaiian Heat, and that's where GJ's from and all of those guys. So I was playing D4 for them, but that was my first NXL event. And then 2017, I only played one WCPPL. And then in 2018, I played my first pro event. So I did the math, and I have only played 12 NXL events. 11 of them haven't been pro.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember when I first started seeing you. Let's go. That's awesome. I remember when I first started seeing your name because, like, I'm also Irish. I'm guessing you got to be Irish, dude, with a name like Paddy. Are you? If you're not Irish,
hey,
then somebody in your family loved the Irish people or whatever. Because, like, I was like, I saw you walking around and I saw the name Paddy Gleason, and I'm like, on my Irish side, it's McDonald, and I was just like, that dude looks Irish as hell, dude. Anyway, and then you were, like, really aggressive and flying around and. Anyway, I heard good things about you, and but it's been again, that's the underdog story, man. Like, getting through the substance abuse, coming in. Man. Yeah, and people had told me. I remember talking to Map. He's like, bro, if you ever get a chance to talk to Paddy, dude, it'll trip you out, and I was like, okay. And I love Map, and Map has his own crazy stories. Map, he spent his first 8 or 10 years in the jungles of Cambodia with his tribe being led around by his grandfather on the run from the Khmer Rouge. He's lucky to even be alive. And then when he came to the States, he had like one pair of pants and one pair of shoes and couldn't speak English. And so, all the white people up there were mean to him. And then he got mad at the world and was an Asian gangster for a little bit. And then paintball saved his life. And now he's like a dad and a father and a businessman. And it's like such an amazing success story. So when a guy like Map Chin is like, yeah, dude, Paddy's story is pretty crazy, then I'm like, okay, I got to talk to this dude eventually. But it's just that's it's like with paintball, we talk about. I say this all the time, and I love it. I think it's a really potent thing because it's so true. It's the gift of the game. There's so many gifts of this game, so many different levels, and the fact that you've been hanging in here now, and you've been given an opportunity by Corey and the Thunder organization to be one of the first attackers to make a name for yourself in this pro league, and you've had some good points out there, man. I think you got a decent chance at being that guy. So I just think it's a really cool story, man. And I thank you so much for being super honest about that. Let's transition a little bit and talk about Thunder. So you hit up Corey, you're like, hey, hook me up with a Lux. And then, but how did you actually get to come out and make the team? Because there's a big transition from I haven't played in forever to you actually going in, because Corey's not going to let you on the team because he's like, oh yeah, this is my homie. He's a former drug addict, dude. I want to just make sure he's okay. No, that's not how it works. You got to keep what you kill at this level, dude. And so you have to go out there and you have to do your fair share of the killing in order to get a shot. And so take me to that moment. Like, when did you get that opportunity to come in and get that chance to be on Thunder?
Yeah, let me tell you what, man. There's a lot of people that did not want me to have that spot. I was hitting Corey up, and we talk frequently. I'm not going to lie. Me and Corey are really good friends. You know what I mean? But you're exactly right. He's not going to let me have a spot or keep a spot if I was not performing. You know what I mean? Like, I got to produce. Yeah. And so when in 2017, me and my wife, now girlfriend at the time, we were just kind of winding down with school and everything, and I wanted to move back up to the mainland, give it another shot, because I spent most of the time up here when I was using, and she had never moved off the island at the time, and so we weren't ready to grow roots yet. And so at the end of 2017, when Thunder was going to get relegated, they were going to rebuild, and then they got their spot back, and Corey was looking to rebuild. He hit me up, man. He knew he caught wind that I was going to be moving up, and caught wind was me calling him all the time saying, "Hey, I'm moving up there. I'm going to play."
Caught wind is like a giant fan blowing the wind towards him. Yeah.
I was like, "I'm coming, man. You better be ready." And but originally he was not going to let me come onto the squad. Obviously, he was telling me about different teams in the area that I should play with, and like they would just watch me play and stuff like that. And then I honestly, I don't know what had him have a change of heart, but he called me around Christmas time of 2017, and he's like, "Hey, man, when you get up here, you have a tryout spot." And that was when so fast forward, I ended up. So at the time, me and my wife were working in the human services field. I was a substance abuse counselor. She worked at a boys' home. We quit our careers, we got married, then we moved, and that was all within like a 4-week span. And then as soon as we got up here and touched down in Washington, that weekend, which was my birthday weekend, we had the tryout weekend, which I ended up making the squad. So it was a huge leap of faith into doing that, which also I don't dive into too much, but talk about taking yourself out of your comfort zone and really putting yourself to the grindstone to see what you're made of. I felt very insecure at that time, but I still made the squad. And I'm not going to lie. I know what people say. We know the paintball community. Everybody has their opinions, and everybody feels like their opinion is right. And I know for a fact, a lot of people were kind of scratching their heads, and many of them said I only got that spot because I'm Corey's friend. But a lot of people don't realize I get a lot of adversity from Corey, I think, because of that. One, he wants to forge me into the best player that I can be, but two, it's like I don't have this spot only because of friendships. Like, I got to earn it, right? And that is my main intent. Like, I know that you were saying that I show promise and everything, and I want to just say, like, Matty, no, I do have promise, and I'm gonna work hard to get that spot. You know what I mean? And be one of the top players. Like, that's just one of my goals, and I have a pretty good track record with completing my goals. And so 2017 was that first year. And what I really take pride in being in on Thunder is, man, if you can remember on 2017, that season, bouncing back from relegation in 2016, we weren't a fan favorite. It was very, it was a very rude awakening coming into the pro division. And especially coming from a completely rebuilt squad where there was 4 of us that had never played a pro event, which was at the time Harrison, James Arnatoff, TJ Staunton, and me. And we did not win a game until Atlantic City, the 3rd event, I think. Maybe. Yeah, it was the 3rd event. We only won 1 game. Yeah. So we went.
That sounds about right.
And that was the last.
That sounds about right.
That was the last.
But you saved it at the end because we were wondering. We're like, oh my God, here we go again. I mean, Thunder, who came into the league and I think it was in Galveston, and we had that. It's a long story. We could spend, and we don't have forever, but we could always
right.
go back down the road again. But yes, long story, but you guys got relegated, came back, and then because of the expansion. But we were thinking, man, as that was happening, those first couple events, and I'm looking at this overall and I'm trajectory, and I'm thinking, man, it is not looking good again here. And I've been a big fan of Thunder because I've known Matt I played with Matt back in the day. I played against Corey. I love Corey. And so I just love the fact that he brought Thunder back in, and the whole Pacific Northwest. I've had a lot of good times up in the Pacific Northwest. That's been a hotbed of paintball talent for so long. And I just really wanted there to be a solid team from up there again. But you're right, it wasn't looking good. But then you guys kind of saved it a little bit. And since then, it's been better. You know, the trajectory for Thunder, even though, and we got to kind of bring in how you guys did at this last event. There's so many teams that went 1-3 at the first event in Vegas. Now, when are we going to get back to this? We don't really know. No one really knows exactly when, but we will, like I said in the beginning, come hell or high water, we will eventually get paintball played again. You know, because it's like there's two different narratives here. You have the NXL as a whole with all of the, 250, 300 teams or whatever that can get there and play. But for me, pro paintball is 20 teams, dude. And all I really need is a field somewhere. We'll bring our crew and we'll put some cameras up, and we can do it. You know, like the pro leagues can play. We can keep our distances. And I mean, obviously in the pits, it's a little bit different, but whatever. Like once we get through this quarantine area, we can get the pro paintball side of things started eventually again. It will happen. It's not going to be forever, and it will be played again. But the narrative now, as we head into whenever we get that going, is that there's a ton of teams that were 1-3. The only team that didn't win an event or didn't win a game was the Outlaws, and they had a couple close ones. But you were one of the teams that went 1-3. You guys lost to the Russians by 4. That was actually not that bad of a game for you guys. Then you lost to Damage by 4 as well, but that was a little bit more of a blowout, at least on paper. It was a 1-5. Russians was a 3-7 loss. Then you beat the absolute brakes off of Energy. So that it's Thunder is getting to that point where, and you can kind of bring this in, like you said, you guys went down that road that one year and were on the precipice again of potentially, heading down relegation area, but then brought it back up. But since then, the narrative for Thunder has been a lot better. You guys, a lot of times you go 2-2, either make it to Sunday, barely miss it. And that's been a story of your team's caliber. There's a couple teams that are on that bubble. So that's kind of where, I kind of like to give it to you then. And then you lose the ML Kings by 1. But if you end up beating the ML Kings and you go 2-2, you might have had a chance there because you beat the NRG guys by so much. And NRG gave Damage a run for their money. They beat the ML Kings. So it was just kind of interesting that you beat up NRG that bad at a newer team out there. You literally, you just murder them off the field. It wasn't even close. You didn't let them score a point. So let's just start with that Russian game. We'll kind of take it from there. But what did you think of you guys' performance in Vegas? Like, where was your heads at heading into the event?
I feel like you just triggered some PTSD, bro. Vegas, man.
Sorry, dude.
Vegas was another learning experience, man. They're all learning experiences, man. That's what I learned from that first season. I was kind of just saying, it's like, that first season really tested my grit, you know what I mean, of just persevering. And so I think we're, like you said, we're on this bubble now. Last season, we went 2-2 for most of the events, only got knocked out by a couple points. So like going into Vegas, our mentality was like to put our fate into our own hands and just punch our ticket to Sunday without having to worry about the point spread and this and that. And it just wasn't in our cards. I think that we will do what we always do and just hit the drawing board again and continue growing. We do have a few new additions. So every time you do that, you do have to kind of gel again, even though we have most of the guys back, which is nice. I mean, that's the first time since I've been in this inception of Thunder that we've had almost a whole new roster. So this time Vegas we just fell short. You know what I mean? It shows a lot of promise though, as always.
Well, for sure. Like, let's look at this Russian game, right? You guys go up a couple points. Penalty here, there. All of a sudden, you start to let You all right?
Matt, I'll be right back.
All right. So yeah, not sure what's going on, but so oh, he's coming back. But the situation with it's all good. But so the situation with at least of that Legion game is that you guys went up a couple points, you smashed them in the face, and then they kind of woke up. They're like, well, wait a second, and then they started running up the point, the score on you. And then it was close to start out with, and that's because the Russians look very mortal in the prelims. And yes, you did pick up a couple new guys. You got Kurzawa. John Kurzawa came over. He's been on Boom. He was on the Outlaws as well too. I love John Kurzawa. Real nice guy. He's a dentist. He had a crazy story where he broke both his hands, and he was able to fight back through that. You got David on the squad as well too. But then like you said, I mean, essentially, other than Harrison leaving, you still have a lot of the core dudes. You got Greg. You got GJ Sakaguchi, who I believe in his talent. Obviously, you got Corey and Map. Yourself, got Unger playing the snake side. I mean, I just feel that that's a team given some time. If you can keep that squad together based on, and I'm just not just, blowing smoke into the wind here and just coming up with this off the top of my head. I mean, if you go back and watch the games you've had historically against top teams before, I do feel that with your talent level, you guys can contend. But you guys need to tighten it up. You need to stop the bullshit mistakes you guys make sometimes when you hit pressure situations, like meaningless penalties. Situational awareness and your survivability needs to increase. But those are all things that you guys know about at this particular time. And I just think that moving forward, if you look at your topsy-turvy performance that you guys had, again, you took the lead early against the Russians and then you let them come back. You go and play damage and you only put 1 point up there. You smash Energy, who didn't play bad. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, yeah, they're the new kids on the block. Energy put a win up. They beat the ML Kings. They hung with damage. They got murdered by you guys, and then they kind of got murdered by the Russians. So, but at least they put a point up on the Russians. They couldn't put a point up on you guys. And then you barely lost the ML Kings, who have gotten a lot better with their Florida core with a couple imports. So I just think that it's a very interesting story going forward, heading into, whenever we can kind of come back here. But I would kind of like to, you play I want to talk about your game specifically. And I just love that Thunder is pushing the issue. You guys do play, you can play in the scramble, but you also like to push the issue. You play an athletic game, get guys in good positions. You yourself, and that one of the reasons I started to notice you is you had it's funny that you're saying that you woke up one day an addict rolling over skin and bones, but you're kind of a little bit of a jacked monster now and in peak physical condition. And so that's, how did you get to there? Because I'd like to move this in before I let you go. I got to talk about the Off The Leash stuff and what you're doing there. So how did you make that transition? I mean, sometimes, that's people that have that addictive personality and they just, it's about focus. It's where is your attention going? You're a human being and we're emotional robots, and you wake up and you're like, well, where is my attention going? What fix am I getting today? Am I going to get this opiate fix here and have the dopamine rush come that way? Or am I going to start moving my body around and get my opiate, or not opiate, but get my dopamine fix that way? Because it's so much more positive, and it just leads to your, overall mental health, physical health. And then that starts, you can push that into what you're doing now with Off The Leash. So kind of bring me into that. Like, how did you get from being skin and bones, rolling over one day, close to death's door, an addict, to being somebody who's like getting people into peak physical condition and doing what you're doing with Off The Leash?
Yeah, man. And that is, I think that image and that feeling is something that I hold on to me all the time, because that is at the core one of my fuel for my fire. Because I promised myself that I would never feel like that again. So and then what it comes down to is just channeling my energy. Like you just said, I'm still an addict. I just channel my energy towards this more positive stuff, it's fitness, or whether it's life coaching for people, or wanting them to get, take themselves off the leash, basically. We all have our different leashes, basically. And that's what Off The Leash represents, right? It's like taking ourselves off of our own, taking ourselves off of our own self-limiting beliefs and really chasing after what we want. And Off The Leash wasn't something that I just had an idea of from the inception. It's something I kind of fell into. And it's definitely just my mindset, and like how Ronnie Dizon said, it's more of a movement, and that's kind of the direction that we're kind of go. And, you know, as far as my playing style, I like to play aggressive, man. And I'm gonna fight. You know what I mean? I think like all love for my homie Harrison, who is OTL athlete. But I'm not going to let anyone stand in my way. And I know that there was a lot of people saying like, man, with Harrison leaving, they're going to be really hurt. But like, I worked my ass off that by the last 2 events of last season, I earned that starting spot. Like I was that, you know, I started that and then carrying on to this season. So that's just what I carry along with me, is just always wanting to be better. And I've had a really fun time. I mean, it is really fun. To be coaching these other pros and players from all around the world under the name of Off the Leash, and tie that in with Thunder. Like, you know, growing up, like I told you in the beginning, like we always just had a window to the world of paintball through videos, push, magazines, all of that. And when you're stuck on an island, you tend to dream about what you would do when you get to the scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, for sure. I had those dreams too, man. I know. I mean, I was stuck on an island, but I know what you're feeling. Yes, that's a whole nother interview.
Shot.
But yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. But this is my one shot. You know, this is my one shot, and I am using this Off the Leash thing just to make connections with the other pros. I mean, I talked to Ronnie and Archie and Colt and all those guys. Jesse now. Like, man, I don't know. Like, I'm still a fanboy at heart, but like, you know, and I have like now these relationships with these other pros, and then connecting with people all around the world that want to get better at paintball and helping them do it physically. It's freaking awesome, man. I don't know. It's
well,
great.
they see your passion. That's what I noticed too. That's why I wanted to get you on the show, to be honest, because, you know, I'd seen you around and heard good things and saw you trying to work your way into the starting position. And I saw you on the field. I've watched every single game of pro paintball since 2008 or something. I've stopped counting long ago.
But watched a lot of games.
You know, yeah, a lot of games. I watched more paintball than probably anyone walking the earth. But I start, you know, I just heard good things, and so I was thinking, you know, I'm always looking for the story, because I just, you know, Ken, it's so important to me that people understand all these captivating stories that are happening within the framework of the game of paintball, the sport of paintball. It's to me, there's just a lot of mental effort there. There's a lot of success stories. There's a lot of failure. There's a lot of this striving for the betterment of themselves and their fellow man. And so when I saw that in you, I was like, we got to get Paddy on the show. And then I saw that you were starting to make, you know, some traction with some of these other guys and trying to make their lives better. And I've seen this with, you know, other guys that I've known too, that are trying to do the same thing. And the more of it, the better, because, and I say this all the time, like, dude, you have to tell your stories. I feel like this is what my mission has been, to tell all your guys' stories. If you notice, I'm not on social media talking about, hey, dude, look how dope I am. Look at me, look at this, and look at I this or that. It's like this guy, that. I'm always trying to tell your guys' story, because that's what I feel one of my purposes here on life. And so to see what you've been doing now and trying to help these guys, and to have this facilitation of the betterment of other players and just people in general, you know, through the framework of the game of paintball, which I feel is such a huge framework to make every human soul better. You know, again, that's the gift of the game. No matter which way you play it, you go play it once, well, you're going to realize you're not made of glass, and you're going to have a great time. And then the more that you lean into it, the more the lessons, you know, the more the lessons materialize out of the fog, and you start to see certain things and understand certain paths to make yourself better. So the fact that you rolled out one day in bed, an addict, skin and bones, and now, you know, you're a dude who's very physically fit, and you're trying to help other people achieve their fitness goals. I was like, we got to tell this damn story, dude. Let's get this dude on. Let's talk about Thunder. Let's talk about Off the Leash. So, man, I thank you so much for sitting in with me, Paddy. And where can people go for more information about Off the Leash? And do you have anyone to thank before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll get, let's start. I just like to thank Corey and the whole Thunder organization, all my boys, all my sponsors. Really makes it just, I just smile, man, thinking that I have, you know, all the support and and this camaraderie that we built. Off the Leash, we do training programs specifically for paintball players, and you can find that at offthelleashlifestyle.com, off the leash lifestyle on Instagram. And then you can also find me at Paddy Gleason, and which I have all the resources as well for Off the Leash. Yeah. And I like to get after it, man. Training programs are pretty effective. I am humbly pleased when all the pros reach back to us. You can catch Thomas Taylor doing all the workouts and stuff like that. I love watching his videos, and he's getting after it. And it just makes it fun, man. You know, it's one vein of our sport that you can kind of dive into to become a better paintball player. So that's kind of, I saw the gap there. I'm trying to fill it, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, again, dude, I just think it's an awesome thing that you're doing. And especially with everyone's kind of stuck at home and everyone's kind of thinking, well, what could I be doing right now? You know, where do I want to go with this? And everyone's probably jonesing to go do whatever their activity is that they want to do. Unless it's like video games or reading books or watching shows or hanging out with your woman or your dude, whatever it is. Like if it's anything other, that's all people get to do these days. So you know, people are probably jonesing to get out and play some paintball. If you are lucky enough, if you're listening to my voice and you can play paintball out there in the world, then God bless you. Or you can do whatever that you are excited to do, because we haven't been able to do that here on the West Coast. So the fact that if you can do that, hit Paddy up and get yourself your ass into some shape, so that when we actually can get out there to play the game that we love so much, or do whatever activity it is that you really love so much, that you're ready to go. And also to stay mentally fit as well too, because you know, this is hard mentally on everybody, as we're all kind of just, you know, it's like in prison, to keep you away, in order to punish you, they keep you away from all the murderers and rapists and thieves. And that's the most hardcore punishment other than killing you that they can come up with, is to keep you away from everybody. And that's what we're consciously doing to each other right now to try to, you know, to keep this virus away from everybody. Yeah, it's crazy, but it is what it is. And here we are. So like I said, hit Paddy up. And man, Paddy, thank you so much for sitting in. I really appreciate that. Again, this is our, you know, it's a true underdog story. You know, he's playing pro. He made it from D4 all the way to pro, made it from addict to Jack Monster, running his own fitness company. I think it's just so inspirational, man. So hats off to you, my friend. And what an amazing story. Dude, my pleasure. Absolutely. We will have Jesse Stevens on, who also has a little bit of an underdog story himself. You know, in the sense that, I mean, he was on the bubble, you know, not really prepared to play pro, had to walk away consciously, did work on his own stuff to come back to help be one of their go-to guys off the bench, to be their utility attacker, to help them win 2 tournaments in a row and win the series title. It's a great story, and we're going to hear that on Friday. I believe 2 or 3 on the Eastern or Western time, and then so still working on time. Anyway, but thank you guys so much for tuning in to Gosports Live. Again, we got a lot more content coming at you. Episode 2 of the Impact series is dropping. Gosports Tactics is about to drop as well. But again, Paddy, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.